Under the burning sun of the borderlands, a man named James walked slowly along the dry path that cut through the canyons. His boots were dusty, his shirt torn, and his face carried lines that spoke of many years of hardship. He was not old, but life had aged him. His arms carried scars from battles he never wished to fight, and his eyes had the weight of memories he could not forget. James was not searching for anything in particular. He had no home, no fixed place to go. He was a wanderer, moving from one lonely horizon to another, trying to find a reason to keep walking. That afternoon, as the wind pushed small clouds of dust across the valley, James heard something faint. At first it was so soft he thought it was only the echo of the wind, but when he stopped and listened, the sound grew clearer. It was the shaky breath of a child and then a whisper. He turned toward a cluster of rocks and moved closer with slow steps. Behind the rocks he found two young children crouched together, their eyes wide with fear. They were twins, a boy and a girl no more than 10 years old. Their long dark hair was messy, their clothes torn, and their little hands clutched each other tightly as if letting go would mean losing the last bit of safety they had. James bent down and spoke softly. "You're safe now. Don't be afraid." His voice was calm, but the children only stared, unsure if they could trust him. Finally, the girl whispered something in Apache, her words shaking. James did not know the full language, but he had traveled long enough to understand a little. From her broken words and gestures, he pieced together their story. Their village had been attacked. Bandits had come like a storm, bringing fire and shouting. The children had been hidden away by their mother, who then fought to protect the others. But she had been taken. The boy tried to be brave as he explained with trembling hands that 30 armed bandits had captured their mother and were holding her somewhere in the desert. James listened, his chest tightening. He remembered his own childhood when raiders had come to his town. He remembered how no one came to help him or his family. That pain had never left him. As he looked at the twins, he felt that old wound open again. He could not let history repeat itself for these children. "Your mother is alive," James said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I will bring her back." The twins looked at him with wide, searching eyes. They did not know this man, yet something in his voice carried a weight of truth. The boy finally nodded, tears shining in his eyes. The girl touched James's hand as if to hold on to a promise. James stood and studied the ground. He saw fresh tracks, heavy boot prints pressed deep into the sand. They led away from the village ruins and toward the canyon edge. He knew the desert well enough to follow them. The path would be dangerous. 30 bandits were too many for one man, but James's heart was already set. He asked the children to wait in a safe hollow near the stream, hidden by tall grass. He gave them a piece of bread from his bag and told them not to move until he returned. "Stay together," he said. "Your mother will come back to you." As James walked away, his mind replayed the last few minutes. The twins' fearful eyes reminded him of the helpless boy he once was. That memory lit a fire in him. For years he had wandered, searching for meaning. Now, for the first time in a long while, he felt he had found it. The tracks grew clearer as he moved deeper into the desert. He noticed where the bandits had rested, leaving behind ashes of a fire and empty bottles. He noticed broken branches where horses had been tied. James's sharp eyes caught every detail, and his senses grew more alert with each step. He moved like a hunter, his every thought fixed on the captured mother and the 30 men who held her. As the sun began to sink, James climbed a ridge and saw smoke rising in the distance. Below, in a shallow valley, a camp was set up. There were men sitting around fires, laughing loudly, their rifles leaning against rocks. Horses were tied near the edge, stamping their hooves restlessly. In the center of the camp, he saw her, the Apache mother. Her hands were tied, but her eyes were fierce, refusing to bow to fear. James's jaw tightened. He counted quickly, too many for a direct fight. 30 armed men against one tired wanderer seemed impossible, but he had faced impossible odds before. He thought of the twins waiting by the stream. He thought of their small hands and their whispered voices. His decision became unshakable. He crouched low, studying the camp from every angle. The land itself became his ally. The canyon offered shadows, loose rocks, and narrow paths. He knew that if he moved with patience and cunning, he could strike without being seen. He did not need to fight all 30 at once. He would fight the land's way, silent, sudden, and sharp. The evening wind carried the sound of the bandits' laughter up the ridge. James's hand rested on the worn handle of his knife. He breathed deeply, steadying himself. He was only one man, scarred and weary, but he carried something stronger than numbers. He carried purpose. As the sky darkened and the first stars appeared, James whispered to himself, "For the twins, for their mother." He began his slow, silent descent toward the camp. Every step reminded him of the life he had lived, wandering, fighting, and carrying scars with no meaning. But tonight he was walking into a fight that mattered. Tonight every scar he gained would have a purpose. He moved closer, unseen, as the fire crackled below. His plan was forming in his mind, sharp and clear. He would strike at night when shadows were his friends. The bandits had no idea that a lone man was watching, waiting, ready to risk everything for 2 children and their mother. James's eyes burned with determination as he melted into the dark. The battle had not begun, but his heart had already chosen the path. And once James chose a path, there was no turning back. The night settled slowly over the canyon, spreading a blanket of darkness across the desert. James crouched on the ridge, his eyes fixed on the campfire below. The laughter of the bandits drifted upward with the smoke, careless and wild. They believed they were safe, hidden deep in the valley. They had no idea that a lone man, scarred and silent, was watching every move they made. James studied the camp carefully, the way a hunter studies his prey. He counted again, 30 men in all. Some were drunk, some played cards, some argued loudly over stolen goods. Their leader sat near the largest fire, his face marked with a long scar that ran from his brow to his jaw. That scarred man spoke with authority, barking orders, and the others listened. His voice was rough, and every so often he would throw back his head and laugh. The Apache mother was tied to a post near him, her arms bound tightly, but her spirit was unbroken. She sat tall, her eyes fierce, and her silence carried more strength than the bandits shouting. James's heart tightened at the sight of her. He thought of the twins waiting by the stream, hiding in the grass, hungry and afraid. They trusted him. Their mother trusted no one, yet even she needed someone now. James knew he could not let her spirit be crushed. He whispered to himself, "Not while I still breathe." As the moon rose higher, James began to move. He descended carefully, using shadows to hide his body. He pressed himself against the canyon wall, sliding step by step until he reached a cluster of rocks near the edge of the camp. From here he could see the faces of the bandits more clearly. They looked cruel but careless, men who thought the desert belonged only to them. James waited, letting the camp grow quieter. By midnight, several men had collapsed into sleep. The others grew lazy, their guard dropping. This was what James had been waiting for. He knew rushing in would mean certain death, but patience could turn numbers into weakness. His plan was simple: take them piece by piece. He could not fight 30 at once, but he could fight one at a time. The desert would help him. The darkness would cover him. And his scars, earned from years of struggle, would guide him. His first chance came when 2 men wandered from the fire to fetch water. They joked loudly, unaware of the eyes following them. James moved silently, his feet soundless on the sand. In one swift motion, he struck from the shadows. The first man dropped before he could speak, and the second, startled, had no time to raise alarm. James dragged them into the rocks, leaving no trace behind. His heartbeat was steady. One step completed, many more ahead. He returned to his vantage point and studied again. The leader still sat proudly, sipping from a bottle, while the mother sat bound, her gaze fixed on the flames. For a moment, James wondered what she was thinking. Perhaps she prayed to the spirits of her ancestors, or perhaps she trusted her children to survive. Either way, she held her head high, and that gave James more strength. The hours crept by. James struck again when he saw weakness. A man wandered too far from the group, gone in silence. Another stumbled toward the horses, pulled into the shadows. Slowly, the numbers began to thin. James worked like a shadow of the desert itself, invisible, silent, relentless. Yet with each step, his body grew heavier. He knew he could not do this all night. At some point, he would have to face the storm head-on. As dawn began to approach, James found himself crouched behind a broken wagon near the camp. He could hear the bandits snoring, could smell the smoke of dying fires. He took this moment to breathe, to gather strength. His hand brushed over an old scar on his chest, a reminder of a past fight he had barely survived. He whispered to himself, "Every scar means I lived for another day. Today they mean I fight for them." The sun began to paint the sky with pale light. With daylight, his cover would weaken. The bandits would wake and their numbers would overwhelm him. He needed a plan. His eyes searched the camp and then he saw it. Barrels of stolen powder stacked near the leader's tent. If he could use that, chaos would erupt. It could turn 30 against themselves. James moved closer, each step measured and silent. He reached the barrels and carefully loosened one. He spread the powder in a thin trail leading toward the rocks. Then he waited, holding a flint in his hand. His heart pounded as the camp stirred. The leader rose, stretching his arms and shouting for the men to wake. Soon the noise of the camp grew again, loud and careless. That was when James struck. He lit the trail. In seconds, fire ran like a snake toward the barrels. A roar filled the valley as flames exploded, sending men scrambling, shouting in panic. Smoke filled the air. Horses screamed, and chaos spread like a flood. In the middle of it all, James rushed forward. He cut the Apache mother free, his knife slicing through the ropes. She looked at him, eyes fierce but surprised. "Go," he urged. "Find your children," but she shook her head. Her voice was calm and strong. "I will not leave, not while they still breathe." James saw her spirit and knew she would not run. Together they crouched in the smoke, watching the bandits stumble in confusion. It was not over yet. The leader's voice cut through the noise, rallying his men. "Find him! Kill him!" James knew this was only the beginning. The camp was broken, but the fight had only just begun. He turned to the mother, his voice low. "Stay close. We'll finish this together." The desert wind carried the smoke high into the sky. The sun rose fully, casting light on the scarred man who stood ready to face 30 enemies. James's body ached, his old wounds burning, but his heart was steady. He had chosen this path, and there was no turning back. The battle for the twins' mother had begun, and James was ready to pay every price. The camp was no longer the same. What had been full of laughter and arrogance hours earlier now looked like a broken nest of hornets. Smoke hung in the air. Men stumbled in confusion. Horses pulled against their ropes, and the echo of the explosion still rang in their ears. James crouched low near the broken wagon with the Apache mother beside him. He could see the fear in the bandits' eyes, but also the fury rising in their leader's face. The scarred man bellowed, waving his rifle high, shouting for his men to regroup. His voice was raw, like the growl of a wolf refusing to surrender his prey. James's chest rose and fell with slow breaths. He had stirred chaos, but he knew it was far from over. 30 men were still 30 men, even if shaken. His plan had bought him time, nothing more. He glanced at the mother. Her wrists were raw from the ropes, but her gaze burned with a calm strength. She was not trembling, not begging for escape. Instead, she seemed ready to stand beside him. "You should go," James whispered, his voice low and urgent. "The twins need you more than I do." She shook her head firmly. "They need both of us." Her words were steady, not loud, but they carried weight. James understood then that she was no ordinary woman. She was a warrior, carved by the hardships of her people. The first wave of bandits began to search the shadows, guns in hand, curses spilling from their lips. James pressed his back against the wagon and motioned for the mother to stay behind him. His knife was ready in one hand, and in the other, he held a small pistol he had taken from the fallen men earlier in the night. The first bandit approached too quickly, his steps careless in the smoke. James sprang forward, striking with precision, dropping him before he could shout. The second turned startled, but James's pistol barked once and the man fell silent. The mother crouched, pulling the fallen man's weapon into her hands, gripping it with the confidence of someone who had seen violence before. She looked at James and gave a small nod. They were no longer strangers, they were allies bound by survival. The sound of the gunshot sent alarm through the camp. The scarred leader roared, "He's here! Find him!" Bandits scrambled, some firing blindly into the smoke, others shouting orders to one another. James moved quickly, pulling the mother deeper into the canyon wall's cover. He knew staying still meant death. Movement was survival. The fight turned into a game of shadows. James struck where the smoke was thickest, vanishing before the bandits could regroup. He used the land, rocks, sand, fire, and silence as his weapons. But with each clash, his body grew heavier. Old scars burned, fresh wounds stung, yet he pressed forward. Every breath reminded him of the twins waiting for their mother's return. That thought alone gave him strength. At one point, 3 bandits cornered him near a collapsed tent. They raised their rifles, grinning with the confidence of numbers. But before they could fire, The Apache mother lifted her stolen weapon and shot with precise aim. Two men dropped instantly, and the third, shocked, turned too slowly. James struck, ending the threat. He turned to her, surprised by her skill. She simply said, "I was not always a prisoner." Her courage stirred something inside him. He had started this fight for the children, but now he realized it was more than that. It was about her spirit, about the survival of her people, about refusing to bow to cruelty. The scarred leader finally stepped into the open, furious, rallying the last of his men. "Enough of this.
He is one man."
Crush him." His voice carried like thunder. The remaining bandits formed into groups, their fear now hardened into anger. The smoke cleared slowly as the morning sun grew stronger, revealing the battlefield. James knew the advantage of darkness was slipping away. He and the mother crouched behind a line of boulders, catching their breath. She pressed her hand against a shallow cut on his arm, her touch steady despite the chaos. "You fight like one who has lost much," she said softly. James did not answer immediately. He looked at the bandits gathering in the light, then at her. Finally he whispered, "I lost everything once. That is why I cannot let your children lose you." For the first time her fierce gaze softened. She placed her hand on his shoulder, not in pity but in respect. "Then we fight together." The next clash was brutal. Bandits rushed in groups, rifles firing, boots pounding against the sand. James and the mother moved with desperate coordination. He struck fast and close, his knife flashing in the sunlight, while she fired with calm precision, never wasting a shot. The ground echoed with shouts, cries, and the crack of weapons. James felt the sting of a bullet graze his side, another slice his arm. Blood warmed his skin, but he kept moving. Pain was an old companion. He had no time to listen to it now. Every scar, every wound, felt like a piece of himself being given in exchange for the children's safety. The fight stretched on, minute by minute, each second heavier than the last. James's strength began to waver, his breath coming in harsh gasps. The mother noticed, covering him when his movements slowed. Together they pushed back step by step, refusing to yield. Then came the moment James had dreaded. The scarred leader himself stepped forward, rifle in hand, eyes burning with rage. His men circled around him, leaving space as if honoring their chief predator. He pointed at James with a sneer. "You think scars make you strong, wanderer? Today they will be your grave." James straightened, every muscle aching but his spirit unbroken. He tossed aside his empty pistol, gripping his knife tightly. His voice was low, steady, and carried across the camp. "Scars don't make me strong. They remind me I've survived worse men than you." The leader roared and charged. The ground shook with the clash that followed. Steel against steel, strength against will. James met him head-on, his knife clashing against the leader's blade, each strike ringing with fury. The Apache mother held back, ready to defend, but knowing this fight was James's to finish. The duel raged, sparks flying, dust rising, until sweat and blood mixed on James's skin. Every strike opened old pain, but he fought with a heart fueled by something greater than himself. He thought of the twins, their small hands clutching each other. He thought of the promise he had made. That promise gave his weary body one last surge of strength. The bandits cheered their leader, but their cheers grew shaky as James refused to fall. Step by step he pushed back, his will unbending. The scarred man's grin faltered as he realized this wanderer carried a strength no scar could measure. And then, as the sun climbed higher, the duel reached its peak. Both men stood bleeding, panting, eyes locked. Around them silence fell over the camp. Everyone waited for the storm to break. James tightened his grip, steadying his body. The next move would decide everything. The heat of the morning sun pressed down on the valley as James and the scarred leader circled each other, their eyes locked in a deadly silence. Around them, the remaining bandits hesitated, unsure of what to do. Some gripped their weapons tightly. Others whispered hurriedly to one another, but none dared step too close. The smoke from the earlier chaos still hung low over the camp, curling in the wind like ghostly fingers. Every movement mattered now. One wrong step could end everything. James could feel the weight of exhaustion in his body. Cuts burned, bruises throbbed, and his chest heaved with each breath. Yet through the pain ran a steady determination. Every scar on his body told him he had survived before. Every scar reminded him that he could endure more. He glanced at the Apache mother nearby. Her stance was strong, her eyes sharp, ready to intervene if he faltered. but she trusted him to face this challenge. The leader roared and lunged first, swinging his heavy knife with a brutal arc. James blocked with his own blade, sparks flying where metal struck metal. He twisted to avoid a second strike and countered, slashing toward the leader's arm. The bandits gasped as the leader stumbled slightly but recovered quickly, snarling as blood began to trickle down his face. James pressed the advantage, moving fast despite the aches in his muscles. He ducked under a wild swing, then rolled through the dust to strike again. The leader grunted in surprise and pain, clearly not expecting such speed and precision. Around them, the camp erupted in chaos once more. The remaining bandits attempted to intervene, but the fear in their eyes held them back. They were unsure how to fight against a man who moved like a shadow and struck like a storm. The mother, meanwhile, took her own action. She moved to intercept the closest bandit who tried to flank James. Her aim was steady, her shots quick and deliberate. One by one, the bandits fell, unable to stop the pair. The twins, watching from a hidden ridge, could hardly believe what they saw. Their mother and James were like warriors from another world, moving together with skill and courage that seemed impossible for mere mortals. James's energy began to waver as the duel dragged on. Sweat mixed with blood on his skin and his breathing grew heavier with each strike. But then he remembered the twins hiding alone in the canyon, waiting for their mother. He thought of their frightened faces, their whispered pleas. That memory sparked a fire within him, pushing him past exhaustion. He would not let them down. With a sudden surge, James feinted to the left, drawing the leader's knife with a false attack. The scarred man took the bait and swung hard, opening a small gap. James used the opportunity, stepping quickly and driving his knife toward the leader's side. The leader twisted violently, trying to counter, but James's strike found its mark. The leader staggered backward, clutching his wound, his roar turning into a choked gasp. For a moment, the leader's eyes met James's. There was disbelief, shock, and finally, grudging respect. He had underestimated this man, thought him weak, and now he realized his mistake. Around the camp, the remaining bandits froze. Without their leader's command, their courage crumbled. They dropped weapons, looked at each other, and slowly began to retreat into the canyon, muttering threats that had no strength behind them. James didn't pursue them. His focus remained on the Apache mother and the twins. He moved quickly, cutting her free from her ropes. She stood, testing her wrists, then looked at him with gratitude and fierce pride. "We are not done," she said softly. "There are still the children." James nodded, and together they began the journey back through the canyon. The desert was quiet now, except for the wind whispering through rocks and the distant cries of startled wildlife. Each step was careful, aware that the threat could return at any moment. The twins' safety was their only priority, and they had to move swiftly to reach them. When they finally arrived at the ridge where the twins hid, the children ran forward, their eyes wide with relief. The mother scooped them into her arms, tears running freely. James stood back for a moment, catching his breath, his body covered in blood and dirt. The twins looked up at him with awe and gratitude, understanding in their own way that this man had risked everything for them. The mother turned to James, her eyes filled with respect. "You saved my children. You saved me. No words can repay that." She reached into a small pouch at her side and pulled out a simple token, a necklace crafted from beads and small stones. "Take this," she said. "It is a symbol of my gratitude and of the bond now between us. Every scar on your body has meaning now, and this belongs to you as well." James accepted the necklace, feeling its weight in his hand. He looked at the mother and the twins, the desert stretching endlessly beyond them, and realized that his wandering days had finally found purpose. Every scar, every wound, every moment of fear and pain had led to this. He had fought not for glory, not for wealth, but for life itself, for protection, for courage, for love. As the sun climbed higher, casting warm light over the canyon, the family, reborn from fear and battle, began the journey back to safety. James walked beside them, his body weary but his spirit alive. The desert was vast and challenges might return, but he knew that together they could face anything. In the distance, the canyon walls echoed with the fading cries of the defeated bandits. The battle was over, but the story of courage, sacrifice, and honor would live on. James's scars would remain as silent witnesses to the fight, but his heart carried a new sense of belonging. For the first time in a long while, he felt the warmth of something greater than himself: family, trust, and the knowledge that bravery could change the course of life. The Apache mother held the twins close, smiling at James. "You risked everything. Every scar tells a story now," she said. James nodded, feeling the weight of that truth. He had faced 30 men and survived, but the real victory was not in the fight. It was in protecting life, in giving hope, and in earning the trust of those who mattered most. As they descended into the safe valleys, James looked up at the endless sky and felt a quiet peace. The scars on his body were no longer just reminders of past pain. They were symbols of courage, survival, and the promise that he had kept. And in the eyes of the mother and the twins, he found a reward far greater than anything money could buy. A family, a purpose, and the knowledge that every sacrifice had been worth it. The desert air was still, carrying only the soft sound of the wind through the canyon. The battle had ended. The bandits scattered or gone, and the dust settled over the ground. James sat on a rock, his body aching from the fight. Cuts ran along his arms and chest. Bruises covered his legs, and his hands shook slightly from exhaustion. But there was no pain in his heart, only relief and a deep sense of purpose. The Apache mother knelt beside the twins, wrapping them in her arms and whispering words they could barely understand. Tears ran down her face as she held them close, feeling their small bodies trembling with the lingering fear of what had almost happened. The twins clung to her, their eyes wide and shining with gratitude, and in that moment, James realized that every scar on his body, every bruise and wound, had led to this. They were alive. Their mother was free, and hope had returned to a small corner of the world. The mother turned to James, her expression serious but kind. "You risked everything for us," she said softly. Her voice was strong, carrying the weight of both respect and gratitude. "No words can truly repay what you've done." She reached into a small pouch tied at her waist and pulled out a necklace made of carved beads and polished stones. She held it out to him. "This is a gift from my heart. It is a symbol of courage, sacrifice, and trust. Wear it, and remember that every scar you carry has meaning beyond your own life." James took the necklace carefully, feeling its weight in his hands. It was simple, yet it held more value than any treasure. He looked at the mother and the twins, and for the first time in many years, he felt a warmth that he had thought lost forever. The necklace symbolized not just gratitude but belonging. For years he had wandered alone, carrying memories and scars without purpose. Now he had a reason to move forward, a connection that gave meaning to his sacrifices. The twins ran around him and their mother, laughing softly, their fear replaced by joy. They asked questions in their small voices, curious and eager, and the mother answered patiently, her hands guiding their movements and their understanding. James smiled, watching them, feeling a peace that he had never known. These children, once hidden in fear, were now free to live, to grow, and to dream because he had chosen to fight. As the sun climbed higher, casting its warm light over the canyon, James helped the mother gather the few belongings she had managed to save. Together they began walking back toward the safe lands beyond the desert, each step careful but steady. The twins held their mother's hands, looking at James occasionally with shy smiles, understanding in their own way that this man had risked his life for them. The journey back was slow but peaceful. The desert, once a place of danger and fear, seemed to stretch endlessly in calm beauty. James's body ached, but his heart felt light. Each scar, each mark of the fight was no longer just a memory of pain. They were symbols of courage, proof of the life he had protected. The mother walked beside him, speaking occasionally, sharing stories of her family and their traditions. Through her words, James felt a connection to a world he had long thought lost. At a small oasis near the canyon edge, they paused. The mother knelt by the water, letting the twins drink and wash their dusty faces. James stood nearby, looking at his reflection in the still water. Blood and dirt streaked his face, his arms bore cuts and bruises, yet his eyes held a steady calm. He saw a man transformed not by wealth or power, but by purpose and courage. The fight had tested him, pushed him to his limits, and left scars that would never fully heal. Yet for the first time, those scars had meaning. The mother approached him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You gave us life when we had none," she said. Her voice was filled with emotion. "You fought when everyone else would have fled. You showed courage when fear could have taken over. You are not just a stranger to us now, you are family." James felt a deep sense of honor and humility. He had wandered for years, searching for meaning. and now he had found it in the lives he had saved. The twins looked up at him with eyes full of trust and admiration. They ran to him, laughing and touching the necklace he now wore. "Our hero," the boy whispered shyly. The girl nodded, hugging his leg tightly. Together they continued toward the distant hills, leaving the canyon and the scattered bandits behind. The sun shone brightly, a new day stretching before them, and the desert seemed less harsh, more alive. Every step was a reminder that bravery had a reward far greater than gold or fame. It was the safety and happiness of those who had been in danger. James walked quietly, side by side with the mother and the twins. He felt a peace he had never known, a sense that his journey, though long and difficult, had a purpose. The scars on his body were not just reminders of past struggles. They were proof that he had acted when it mattered most, that he had faced fear and pain to protect the innocent. As they reached a safe plateau overlooking the valley, the mother stopped and turned to James. "Your reward is not mine to give," she said, her eyes bright with gratitude. "But know this, you have our lives, our trust, and our hearts. Every scar you bear tells the story of courage, and that story will live in us forever." James nodded, feeling the weight of her words settle over him like the warmth of the sun. The twins ran ahead, exploring the safe land, their laughter ringing across the hills. The mother watched them, smiling, then looked at James. He realized that the reward she spoke of was already given. He had seen hope return to these children. He had restored a mother to her family, and in doing so, he had found a place in the lives of people who truly mattered. The desert, once a place of danger, had witnessed bravery, sacrifice, and the strength of the human spirit. James's scars, earned through battle and hardship, now held meaning. They were not marks of loss or suffering. They were symbols of life, courage, and protection. He had fought for more than survival. He had fought to ensure the future of the twins and their mother. And in doing so, he had found a sense of belonging he had never known. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting golden light across the valley, James walked beside the Apache family, the wind carrying the laughter of the children and the soft whispers of gratitude. Every step forward was a promise kept, every scar a story of bravery, and every moment a testament to the power of courage and sacrifice. For the first time in a long while, James felt truly at peace, knowing that his actions had made a difference, and that his scars were worth every moment of pain. And in that quiet, sunlit desert, a wandering man, a mother, and 2 children began a new chapter, a life of safety, trust, and hope, forever changed by courage. Every scar and every choice made for love and protection.